There's a danger in getting too comfortable where you are, because comfort will whisper lies that sound like peace. It'll tell you, this is good enough, stay here, rest here. But deep down, something in your spirit is stirring, because you know you weren't built to stop here. You've come too far to get stuck in almost. You've cried too many tears to sit in good enough. You've fought too many battles to settle for safe. This place was a classroom, not a destination. It was meant to teach you, not to trap you. And if you stay here too long, what was once a blessing can become a barrier. God is calling you to move beyond this level, to step into a realm where faith has to rise, where vision has to expand, and where obedience opens doors that talent never could. You've got to stop decorating what God meant for departure. Stop celebrating what He meant for transition. Because your next chapter won't start until you stop settling for this one. Growth requires movement. Nothing alive stays still. Every living thing that God created is designed to move, to stretch, to change form as it matures. The seed pushes through the soil, the river carves through stone, the child becomes an adult. Movement is the language of life. The moment you stop moving, you stop growing. And the moment you stop growing, something inside you begins to die. Growth is not a comfortable process, but it is always a necessary one. You cannot pray for growth and then resist the movement that comes with it. Growth will always require a shift in mindset, in behavior, and faith. You can't keep doing what you've always done and expect to become who you've never been. God never elevates you while allowing you to stay the same. Every new dimension of destiny demands a new level of discipline. That's why some doors won't open until you move. Some promises won't manifest until you step forward, and some blessings won't appear until you're willing to leave what's behind you. There are seasons when movement is physical. A new job, a new city, a new chapter. But sometimes it's internal. Sometimes God isn't changing your surroundings. He's changing your spirit. He's stirring something deep inside of you that refuses to let you stay still. You can feel it when your passion begins to rise again, when your peace starts to feel disrupted, when your dreams start to wake up in the middle of the night. That's not confusion, that's calling. That's heaven nudging you, saying, you've grown here long enough, it's time to move. Staying still feels safe, but safety can be deceptive. The same ground that once felt steady can turn stale. What used to feed you can begin to starve you if you refuse to move on. The manna that fell in the wilderness was only good for a day. If the Israelites tried to store it, it would rot. God was teaching them that daily dependence and consistent movement were part of spiritual growth. He was showing them that they couldn't stay in one place too long. Every sunrise meant it was time to move closer to the promise. Growth demands that you trust God enough to step, even when the path isn't clear. Abraham had to leave his father's house without knowing where he was going. Moses had to stretch his rod over the sea without seeing how it would part. Peter had to step out of the boat while the waves were still roaring. Every great move of God in Scripture began with someone who dared to move before they understood. Because growth doesn't wait for clarity, it responds to conviction. Movement isn't always about distance. Sometimes it's about direction. You might be busy but not moving forward. You can run in circles, you can fill your schedule, and still be stuck in the same emotional or spiritual space. True growth isn't about motion for motion's sake. It's about progress guided by purpose. It's about moving in the direction of who you're becoming, not just where you're going. When God wants to grow you, He will disrupt your rhythm. He'll make the familiar uncomfortable, the ordinary unsatisfying. You'll start to feel like you've outgrown conversations, environments, and even relationships. That's not arrogance. That's evolution. You can't stay connected to everything from your past and expect to reach everything in your future. Some connections were meant for a chapter, not the whole book. Growth requires that you keep turning pages. And here's the truth: movement will cost you. It will cost you comfort, predictability, and sometimes companionship. But stagnation costs more. Staying still when you've been called to move will drain your joy, dull your passion, and distort your identity. You'll start to settle for lesser versions of yourself just to stay comfortable in familiar spaces. Movement might stretch you, but stillness will suffocate you. God doesn't give you movement without meaning. Every step you take has purpose attached to it. Even when it feels like you're wandering, you're being led. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, roots are forming. Growth isn't always visible. Sometimes it's silent. A seed grows underground long before it breaks through the soil. So if you're in a season where you're moving, but not seeing results, don't lose heart. Something is developing in the dark. Sometimes growth looks like letting go. Letting go of control, of timelines, of who you thought you'd be by now. Growth requires surrender, not to failure, but to faith. You have to release what you can't carry into your next level. Every new season comes with new weight, and you can't climb if you're dragging what was meant to be left behind. The old version of you won't fit in the next dimension God has prepared. Movement also demands obedience. You can't pick and choose when you'll follow God's direction and still expect full growth. Partial obedience produces partial blessing. If He says move, you move. If He says wait, you wait. If He says let go, you let go, even when it hurts. Because sometimes the pain of obedience is the seed of promotion. Every act of faith plants something powerful in your future. And make no mistake, growth will stretch your faith until it feels like it might snap. But it's in that stretch that you discover who you really are. You find out how strong your roots are. You find out how deep your trust runs. You find out that what looked like breaking was actually building. Because growth doesn't destroy you, it defines you. If you refuse to move, life will move without you. Seasons will shift, opportunities will pass, and doors will close that were meant to be walked through. The tragedy of stillness is that it makes you watch others live what you were called to experience. You'll see others step into blessings that could have been yours if only you had trusted God enough to move. So don't confuse waiting with wasting. There's a time to be still and a time to step. And when the Spirit begins to stir, it's time to move. Movement is a sign that you're alive, that your faith is active, that your destiny is in motion. Growth doesn't come from staying where it's safe. It comes from walking into the unknown with courage, conviction, and trust. You won't always see the full picture before you move, but every step you take in obedience draws you closer to what God prepared for you. And when you look back, you'll realize that every shift, every stretch, every uncomfortable step was shaping you for greater things. Growth requires movement, and movement requires faith. So keep walking, keep believing, and keep pushing forward, because the version of you that's waiting on the other side of motion is stronger, wiser, and more powerful than the one standing still. Don't decorate what God meant for departure. That statement cuts deep because it exposes one of the greatest traps we fall into: trying to make permanent what God only meant to be temporary. There are seasons, relationships, jobs, and environments that were designed to develop you, not define you. But when the time comes to move on, instead of packing up, we start decorating. We convince ourselves that maybe if we make it prettier, easier, or more comfortable, we won't have to face the discomfort of leaving. We put paint on places that are falling apart spiritually, trying to make something dead look alive again. The truth is, when God says it's time to go, no amount of decoration can make that place fit anymore. You can rearrange the furniture, add new color, and even light a candle, but you'll still feel the ache of misalignment. Because when grace lifts from a place, peace leaves with it. The same space that once felt like home begins to feel heavy. You wake up feeling unsettled, disconnected, even though nothing obvious has changed. That's not confusion. That's confirmation. It's heaven whispering, "You've stayed long enough." We have a tendency to romanticize the familiar. We tell ourselves it's loyalty when it's really fear. We call it wisdom when it's really stagnation. We stay because leaving costs us comfort, reputation, or control. But God never called you to decorate what He's asking you to depart from. You can't grow while you're trying to preserve what He's trying to prune. The moment you start investing energy into maintaining what's already dying, you begin to drain the very life that was meant for your next season. Think about the Israelites. God delivered them from Egypt, but Egypt was still in their hearts. They were free physically but trapped mentally. They longed for the familiarity of slavery because freedom required faith. They were trying to decorate a desert when God was calling them to possess a promise. Every time they complained, every time they looked back, they were essentially saying, "Let's make this wilderness home." But the wilderness was never meant to be permanent. It was a hallway, not a house. We do the same thing. We decorate our wilderness seasons with excuses. We tell ourselves we'll move when it's easier, when it's clearer, when it's safer. But the truth is, it's never easy, never clear, never safe. Movement requires trust. Departure requires courage. And until you're willing to leave behind what's comfortable, you'll never see what's possible. You can't walk into more while your heart is still anchored before. Sometimes we hold on to people the same way. God sends someone into our life for a reason, not a lifetime, but we mistake assignment for attachment. When their purpose in your story has been fulfilled, God starts to shift the atmosphere. Conversations feel different. The connection feels off. It's not betrayal, it's transition. But because we're afraid to lose what we understand, we start decorating the relationship. We try harder. We overextend. We compromise our peace just to keep something God already released. You can't build a future out of fragments of the past. You can't sustain life in something God already declared finished. When you try, it doesn't just delay your destiny. It drains your spirit. You lose your energy, your focus, your joy. You find yourself exhausted by something that used to energize you. That's how you know grace has shifted. The oil that once flowed there is gone. Don't decorate what God meant for departure. Stop trying to revive what God is trying to replace. Some endings aren't punishment, they're preparation. When God closes a door, it's because He's already built another one that's stronger, bigger, and better aligned with your purpose. But He won't open the next door while you're still clinging to the handle of the last one. The sooner you release what's expired, the sooner you'll receive what's next. We often confuse unfinished with not meant. Just because something didn't go the way you expected doesn't mean it failed. It means it fulfilled its purpose. That job taught you discipline. That heartbreak taught you resilience. That friendship taught you discernment. Every season, even the painful ones, has a purpose. But once the lesson is learned, the location becomes limited. If you stay there, you stop evolving. There's also danger in overinvesting in what's temporary. The more energy you pour into decorating, the harder it becomes to leave. You start saying, I can't walk away now, I've put too much into this. But sometimes the very investment becomes the idol. God never told you to build there. He told you to pass through. Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt because she couldn't stop looking back at what God told her to leave. Her heart was still decorating Sodom while her feet were supposed to be moving towards safety. When God gives you a word to move, obedience must come before understanding. You may not know where you're going, but you do know you can't stay here. Every delay adds distance between you and destiny. Decorating may look like progress, but it's really disguised disobedience. It's polishing something that's perishing. It's adding beauty to bondage. You can't bring resurrection to what God has retired. The Spirit of God doesn't dwell in places of resistance. He moves where there is release. If you want the next blessing, you have to make room for it. Sometimes that means packing up your peace and walking away from what no longer feeds your faith. It means trusting that what's ahead will be worth what you're leaving behind. When you stop decorating and start departing, you'll find freedom in the unknown. You'll start to see that the wilderness wasn't punishment. It was positioning. Every step away from what's familiar is a step toward what's fulfilled. You'll realize that the discomfort you feel isn't destruction, it's direction. God is pulling you out of what's ordinary so He can place you in what's extraordinary. So stop painting walls that are about to fall. Stop fixing furniture in a house that's not yours anymore. Stop trying to make peace with what God has already pronounced over. There is greater waiting for you beyond this level, but you'll never reach it while you're busy decorating what He told you to depart from. The next dimension of your life demands a clean exit, not a comfortable stay. It requires faith, not familiarity. Don't get caught polishing yesterday when God is preparing your tomorrow. When He says move, move. When He says leave, leave. When He says let go, let go. Because no matter how beautiful you make it, the place God has released you from will never again feel like home. Your destiny is too big for decoration. It requires departure. This level was preparation, not destination. That simple truth can change the way you see everything you've been through. Most of us mistake the middle for the end because we get tired, we get comfortable, or we get confused by the delay. We assume that because we've arrived somewhere stable, we've arrived somewhere final. But God never stops developing His people, and every season, even the hard ones, is shaping you for something greater that hasn't yet been revealed. The place you're standing right now is not the promise. It's the process. It's the classroom where character is built, faith is stretched, and identity is refined. This level was meant to teach you something. Maybe it taught you patience. Maybe it showed you how to stand alone. Maybe it stripped you of pride or forced you to depend on God more deeply than ever before. Whatever this level brought, it wasn't meant to imprison you. It was meant to prepare you. The discomfort, the waiting, the uncertainty, all of it has been training ground for what's next. God never wastes pain, never wastes struggle, never wastes delay. Every season serves a purpose, even when it feels like nothing is moving. Preparation seasons are sacred because they expose what comfort can't. When everything is easy, you don't see your weaknesses. You don't recognize where your faith is fragile or your focus is fractured. But when life shakes you, when prayers seem unanswered, when doors close without explanation, that's when you start to grow. God uses these levels not to punish you, but to perfect you. He's sharpening your discernment, strengthening your resilience, and teaching you to trust what you cannot see. It's easy to praise God when you're winning, but can you still trust Him when you're waiting? Can you still believe in the promise when all you see is preparation? Most people quit here because they don't realize this is just the in-between. They mistake the preparation for the punishment. They think silence means absence, but silence is often the sound of construction. God is building something beneath the surface that will sustain you when you reach the next level. He's working in the unseen so that when the visible comes, you'll be ready to carry it. The danger of confusing preparation with destination is that you start to settle. You start building permanent structures in temporary places. You get so used to surviving that you forget how to expect more. You stop growing because you assume this is as good as it gets. But God never called you to stop at good enough. The promise is always greater. What you call stability, He might call stagnation. What you call peace, He might call pause. He's not trying to hurt you by pushing you forward. He's trying to protect your purpose. Think about David. Before he ever wore a crown, he carried a sling. Before he ever sat on a throne, he was in a field tending sheep. That field was preparation. Every lonely night, every battle with the lion and the bear, every moment of obscurity was preparing him for the day he'd face Goliath. If he had mistaken that pasture for his final place, he would have never stepped into his destiny. The same is true for you. This level, this job, this season, this struggle is equipping you for what's next. God often hides greatness in seasons that feel ordinary. You might not see the glory yet because He's still grounding you. You might not see the fruit yet because He's still strengthening your roots. He knows that if He gives you the promise too soon, the weight of it might crush you. So He lets you wrestle with patience, learn humility, and develop endurance. Preparation seasons are where God tests your capacity. Can you handle blessing without becoming prideful? Can you remain faithful when no one is watching? Can you stay obedient when the reward isn't immediate? This level was never meant to be the end. It was meant to prove that you're ready for what's ahead. You had to face certain battles here to gain authority for the next. You had to learn how to pray here so you'd have power there. You had to experience lack here so you'd know how to manage abundance there. Every challenge, every delay, every disappointment has been a divine rehearsal for destiny. But too many people get stuck rehearsing when God is calling them to perform. They keep repeating lessons they should have already learned because they won't let go of what feels familiar. Growth is not automatic. It's intentional. You have to recognize when a season's purpose has been fulfilled and be willing to move on. When God starts stirring your spirit, when the grace for a thing starts to lift, that's your cue that the lesson is over. Don't keep studying what you've already mastered. The enemy loves to convince you that this is all there is. He wants you to believe that you've peaked, that the best days are behind you, that the dream won't happen. But the devil is a liar. If you're still breathing, you're still building. If your heart is still beating, your destiny is still unfolding. This level may have been hard, but it's not the end. It's a chapter, not the conclusion. God will often let you feel the frustration of transition so you don't mistake it for completion. That restlessness you feel, that stirring deep in your gut, that's divine tension. It's the pull between where you are and where you're going. It's God saying, "Get ready. You've learned what you needed to learn here. Now it's time to move." And when he moves you, it won't make sense at first. You'll question it. You'll look back and think, "But I just got comfortable." That's exactly why he's moving you. Comfort is the enemy of calling. You can't grow where you've gone numb. You can't build faith in the absence of challenge. The next level will require everything this level taught you. But it will also demand that you let go of the mindset that got you here. So when you look around and wonder why things are shifting, why doors are closing, why peace feels distant, don't panic. It's not falling apart, it's falling into place. God is transitioning you from preparation to purpose. He's closing this chapter not because he's done, but because he's ready to begin the next one. This level was preparation, not destination. You weren't meant to die here. You were meant to develop here. You weren't meant to settle here. You were meant to strengthen here. Everything you've endured was necessary. Every tear, every test, every triumph, all of it has been working together for your good. So lift your head, steady your heart, and get ready. Because if this level was preparation, the next one will be manifestation. Faith unlocks what fear keeps closed. Those 6 words hold the power to change your entire life. Every door God intends for you to walk through will require faith. And every door the enemy wants to keep you from will be guarded by fear. Faith and fear cannot occupy the same space. One always pushes the other out. When faith rises, fear loses its grip. But when fear rules your heart, faith can't function. The truth is, many of us aren't waiting on God. God is waiting on us to believe. The promise has been prepared, but it's your faith that turns the key. Fear is subtle. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it disguises itself as logic, comfort, or caution. It tells you to wait until you're ready, until the timing is perfect, until you have all the answers. But faith doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It moves in spite of uncertainty. Faith says, even if I can't see it, I trust that God is already in it. Fear demands proof, faith rests in promise. Fear needs explanation, faith just needs obedience. God has placed opportunities, breakthroughs, and blessings within your reach, but they are locked behind the door of fear. Fear keeps you from applying for that job, from starting that business, from forgiving that person, from walking into your calling. It whispers, "What if you fail?" But faith whispers louder, "What if you fly?" Every time you choose faith over fear, you open a door the enemy never wanted you to see. The Bible says that without faith, it is impossible to please God. That's because faith isn't just belief, it's movement. It's stepping forward when nothing makes sense, trusting that the God who brought you this far won't abandon you now. Faith doesn't ignore fear, it confronts it. It doesn't pretend the mountain isn't there, it climbs it anyway. Faith is the courage to walk into a storm believing that Jesus will meet you in the middle of the waves. Fear builds walls, faith builds bridges. Fear isolates you, faith connects you to destiny. Fear paralyzes, faith propels. You can't live by both. Every great man or woman of God in Scripture faced fear. Abraham feared leaving his home. Moses feared speaking. Gideon feared fighting. Peter feared sinking. But each one discovered that the moment they acted in faith, doors opened that fear had been holding shut. Faith doesn't remove fear, it overrides it. Some of the things you're praying for are already yours in the Spirit, but fear is blocking their manifestation. God has already said yes, but fear has you stuck at maybe. You're analyzing what you should be activating. You're reasoning with what you should be releasing. Faith requires risk, not foolishness, but bold obedience. It means stepping beyond what's comfortable because you trust that God's plan is greater than your understanding. Fear makes you focus on what you lack. Faith reminds you of what you have. Fear magnifies the problem. Faith magnifies the promise. When David faced Goliath, fear told everyone else that the giant was too big to fight, but faith told David the giant was too big to miss. Same situation, different perspective. That's what faith does. It changes how you see. It teaches you that opposition is often confirmation that you're on the right path. The enemy knows he can't destroy God's plan for your life, so he tries to destroy your confidence in it. He plants fear to make you doubt what God already said. He uses delay to make you question God's timing. Difficulty to make you question God's power. Disappointment to make you question God's goodness. But faith refuses to surrender. Faith says, even when I can't trace him, I trust him. You may not realize it, but fear has a language. What if? What if it doesn't work? What if I fail? What if they reject me? But faith has its own language. Even if. Even if it's hard, I'll go. Even if I don't understand, I'll trust. Even if it costs me, I'll obey. Fear asks questions to stay still. Faith declares truth to move forward. There's a reason God often says, fear not, before he gives an assignment. He knows that fear can cancel the very destiny he designed for you to fulfill. You can't step into purpose if you're still bowing to panic. The moment you choose to believe, heaven begins to move. Miracles aren't released by emotion. They're released by faith. When you believe God is who he says he is, you give him permission to show himself strong on your behalf. Faith doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It means you won't be led by it. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's obedience in the presence of it. Sometimes faith is trembling while you move. Sometimes it's crying while you trust. Sometimes it's walking with uncertainty, but refusing to turn back. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep moving. Fear builds prisons without bars. It keeps you trapped in the same cycle, living the same year over and over again. It convinces you that survival is success. But you weren't created to survive. You were created to soar. Every time you step out in faith, you expand your capacity for more. Every time you trust God in the unknown, you grow stronger, wiser, and freer. Faith is not a feeling, it's a decision. It's a declaration that says, I refuse to let fear decide my future. Fear might knock at the door, but faith answers it with confidence. Faith reminds you that God has never failed, and he's not about to start now. The same God who opened the Red Sea, who shut the mouths of lions, who raised Lazarus from the dead, that same God is still opening doors, still making ways, still working miracles for those who believe. So stop waiting for fear to disappear before you move. Move and watch fear lose its power. Step out and watch doors swing open. Speak up and watch strongholds crumble. The very thing that scares you most might be the key to your next breakthrough. Faith unlocks what fear keeps closed. The blessings you've been praying for, the healing you've been believing for, the opportunities you've been waiting for. They're all on the other side of faith. You don't have to understand how, you just have to believe that God can. Fear will tell you to stay where it's safe, but faith will whisper, step out. There's more waiting beyond this level. And the moment you move, heaven moves with you. There's greater purpose beyond your present place. Those words carry a truth that can shake you out of complacency and wake you up to destiny. What you see right now is not all there is. What you've experienced so far is not the whole story. God never meant for you to pitch a tent in temporary places. He never intended for you to confuse progress with completion. Where you are right now may be good, but it's not God's best. There's a higher level, a deeper calling, a greater assignment waiting beyond what you can currently see. Sometimes we treat the season we're in like it's the final chapter, when in reality, it's just a paragraph in the greater story God is writing. You may be standing in a place that once looked like a miracle, but if you're not careful, you'll make the mistake of worshiping the miracle instead of the miracle worker. The manna that fell yesterday won't sustain you today. The blessing that once satisfied you was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to propel you. God moves in stages, and each stage has a purpose. But when you've learned what you were meant to learn here, it's time to go higher. Many people get stuck in a "this is enough" mindset. They settle because they confuse comfort with completion. But purpose is not fulfilled in comfort. Purpose is fulfilled in obedience, in motion, in the willingness to follow God into unfamiliar territory. The enemy doesn't have to destroy you if he can distract you into staying where you are. He'll whisper that you've already done enough, that this level is all there is. But if you still have breath in your body, then heaven is not done releasing what's inside of you. You are not just called to exist, you are called to expand. You are not here merely to survive. You are here to influence, to create, to lead, to impact. Every new level of purpose will demand a new version of you. The person who survived the last storm may not be the same one who can steward the next season. That's why God stretches you. That's why He closes some doors, removes some people, and disrupts your comfort. He's not punishing you, He's positioning you. When God begins to stir your spirit, it's because something greater is calling. You can feel it in your restlessness, in your dissatisfaction, in the quiet voice that says, there has to be more than this. That's not ingratitude. That's divine agitation. That's God's way of letting you know that your assignment in this season is ending. You've learned what you needed to learn, and now He's calling you into something deeper. But greater purpose doesn't always come wrapped in clarity. Sometimes it comes disguised as confusion, as delay, as loss. You may not understand why certain things fell apart, why certain prayers seemed unanswered, why certain doors closed just when you thought you were ready. But God closes doors not to limit you, but to lead you. He's redirecting you toward purpose you can't yet see. If you only look at what's in front of you, you'll think God forgot you. But if you look with faith, you'll realize He's preparing you. The present place is a platform, not a prison. It's the launching pad for what comes next. God often allows you to stay in certain seasons just long enough to build the character, the discipline, and the endurance needed for the next one. You can't carry kingdom purpose with a weak mindset. You can't step into divine destiny with small vision. That's why God allows challenges that stretch you. They're not meant to break you. They're meant to prepare you for greater responsibility. Every experience, every disappointment, every victory, and every delay is shaping you for the level beyond this one. What you thought was rejection was actually redirection. What felt like loss was actually liberation. What looked like a setback was really setup. God's purpose is never wasted, even when it doesn't make sense in the moment. Greater purpose requires trust. You have to trust that God knows where He's taking you, even when He doesn't show you the map. Abraham didn't know where he was going. He just knew who he was following. Joseph didn't understand why he was betrayed, sold, and imprisoned, but in time, he realized every painful step was necessary to position him for purpose. David was anointed as king long before he ever sat on the throne. God will give you glimpses of greatness long before He gives you the full picture. That's because purpose is revealed progressively, not all at once. If you stay attached to what was, you'll miss what is coming. Some of the people, opportunities, and places that once fit your life no longer fit your future. And that's okay. Every time God calls you higher, you have to let go of something lower. Don't be afraid to release what no longer serves your destiny. The pain of letting go is temporary, but the reward of obedience is eternal. You may not see it now, but there's a version of you that exists beyond this moment. Wiser, stronger, bolder, more faithful. That version is waiting on you to stop settling and start stretching. God didn't bring you this far to leave you in mediocrity. You are standing on the edge of something greater, but you have to be willing to move. You have to be willing to leave the familiar for the unknown, trusting that what's ahead is worth what you're leaving behind. Purpose doesn't shout, it calls quietly. It nudges, it stirs. It won't let you rest in what's comfortable. You'll feel it in your spirit long before you see it with your eyes. And when that feeling comes, that holy discomfort, that inner push, that's your signal that more is waiting. You don't need every detail, you just need determination. You don't need every answer, you just need assurance that God is leading the way. There's greater purpose beyond your present place. Don't settle where it's safe. Don't stop where it's easy. Don't confuse better with best. God's plan for your life is still unfolding, and the story isn't over. What looks like the end is often just the beginning of something beautiful. The same God who brought you to this level is ready to take you beyond it, to a place where faith becomes sight and promise becomes reality. You were not created to remain where you started. The call of purpose is calling you forward, and when you answer it, you'll realize that everything you've been through was simply preparing you for the greatness waiting beyond this level. You've walked through pain, pressure, and process, but you didn't come this far to stop now. Every tear you've cried, every battle you've fought, every night you almost gave up was shaping you for this moment. You are standing on the edge of something greater, and heaven is whispering, "Don't settle here." This place was never meant to be permanent. It was a passage, not a prison. A lesson, not a lifetime. You can't stay in the comfort of what's familiar when God is calling you into what's next. The same faith that carried you through the last season must rise again to push you into your next one. Fear will try to chain you to the known, but faith will break those chains and point you toward the promise. You've outgrown this level. You've learned what you were meant to learn here. Now it's time to move, to stretch your faith, to trust God's timing, and to step into destiny. Don't decorate what God meant for departure. Don't glorify what He's calling you to outgrow. You can't hold on to the old and reach for the new at the same time. Something has to give, and that something is you letting go.